Hey, welcome everybody to Fourth and Frames, our weekly fantasy football podcast here at fantasyandframes.com and on the Fantasy and Frames podcast network. We basically get you ready for every single week's matchup during the regular season. And I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. With me this week, we got the host of the Dynasty 365 podcast here on the FIF podcast network, Mr. Tyler Heil. Tyler, how are you doing today, man?
I'm wonderful. Just got done watching Christmas Chronicles 2 with the kids.
Okay.
And I'm ready to talk some fantasy football.
Love it. Yeah. So obviously we're not, this is not Wednesday. It's Friday night. We had to push our podcast back a couple days, but we are here. We're not leaving you hanging, and we're here to talk about some great plays that you should be paying attention to, as well as potential people you should be fading this week in week 14 in Bimageddon. This is crazy, man. They push back the fantasy playoffs. They add a week to the NFL schedule. And whose thought was it? Like, hey, let's schedule all these buys in week 14, because clearly they should be paying attention to the fantasy football and how this impacts our lives, right?
Damn straight.
The NFL, that is. That notwithstanding, there are 6 teams on a bye, I believe, and so you'll need some help, especially if you're, on the cusp of making the playoffs, or maybe on the cusp of losing and then therefore not making the playoffs. So we're going to get you covered. Of course, for a lot of things here, for mostly everything we cover here, head over to fantasyandframes.com for more information on starts and sits, as well as IDP starts. We talk about upside plays this week in our Chasing Upside articles, both for offense and IDP. Speaking of IDP, stay tuned for after our show. The guys Hollywood and Nate over on Shoot the Gap will be giving you their IDP takes for this week, week 14 of the 2022 fantasy football season. So yeah, just head over there, read all of our content. Our rankings are going up daily, being updated daily, leading you up to kickoff on Sunday at 1 p.m. Don't forget, on Sundays, we have, starting at 9:30 a.m. every single week, our pregame show where we cover every single matchup on the docket for Sunday, as well as Monday Night Football. We answer all of your start and sit questions. I think we pride ourselves the most on the fact that we get to every single start and sit question, and we break each one of those down to the best of our ability. And so we really appreciate the people who tune in every single Sunday. We should have, over the course of, the 3.5 hours that we're on, plenty of people here from the Fantasy and Frames family to answer a lot of your questions, whether it's DFS, whether it's IDP, or obviously for, offense and redraft. We got you covered. So tune in on Sundays at 9:30 a.m. And with that, I think I did the generic this is what we're doing thing. So let's get into news and notes. Tyler, why don't you take us through some of these this week?
All right. So one of the big ones that we've already kind of seen some fruit born from it is Baker Mayfield requested his release from the Panthers.
Oh my God.
They granted it, and he was claimed by the Rams, and he led a 98-yard game-winning drive to just absolutely stab the Raiders in the heart. So good for him.
Dude, let me work backwards. So about an hour before, I got home today, I was looking at my Facebook, and I follow the Rams Facebook page because they put out, actually, if you haven't already, by the way, folks who still use Facebook and who are football fans, and follow the Rams because they put out really good video content out of all the NFL teams out there. And they posted a video with the title saying, "Here is 3 minutes nonstop of Baker Mayfield baking last night," and it showed all of his highlight plays. Unbelievable! He's there for a day and a half, and not only did he make plays on his feet, not only was he dumping off passes to the open receivers and running backs, he was making some timing throws. He was making some good down and distance throws, especially down the stretch, that last drive to win the game. Like, good for him. And you saw, like, the entire NFL community on Twitter just went ballistic, congratulating him. That was, I don't know what to make of that. I really don't. Matt Stafford's been having a lot of health injuries, health issues, rather, excuse me, over the course of his career. Maybe his time is winding down. They just gave him this monster contract, so probably not. So I don't know. I don't know what this means for the future. All I know is that was a fun experience because that game was sucking for so long, and then it just got flipped on its head.
Yeah, and as a person who has very close experience with the Baker Mayfield experience. Baker has always been capable of this, but I wouldn't read too much into it. He has his games, he has his throws. He has about, I'd say, 7 or 8 throws every season where you're just like, holy crap. Like he was deserving of being the number 1 overall pick at the time, and you can see that, but it's going to fall apart at some point. So I just hope he keeps going for the rest of the season with the Rams. I want to see him have a good rest of the year.
Yeah, no, definitely. He look, hey, he no offense, Tyler. He put in his time in Cleveland. They didn't want him.
Served his time.
Served his time. If anything, I would make the argument that Baker Mayfield helped to make the Cleveland Browns a desirable landing spot just because of the way he had success there. Landing spot, of course, I mean by free agents. So good for him. Good for him.
Yeah. Next up, really good news for the 49ers. Jimmy G's foot does not require surgery. It doesn't make any difference for fantasy football, but it's good for real football in the 49ers. But that leads us into it's Brock Purdy time, who we'll see how he does. I mean, he put up some big numbers at Iowa State last year. I mean, obviously he was Mr. Irrelevant for a reason, but if anyone is going to get Brock Purdy to look like a professional level quarterback, I trust Kyle Shanahan to do it. So I don't think he's an awful 2 QB streamer.
You know the expression where they say just give the ball to your best players and let them do the work?
Mm-hmm.
This sums up Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers offense for the rest of the season. He looks like to me somebody who is going to average over the course of the fantasy playoffs, I don't know, good 14.3, 15.2 points per game.
Yeah. Take Jimmy's finishes and subtract 3 points.
Right. No, exactly. That's crazy to think, but that's exactly what I was thinking about. Yeah.
Oh, man. Next up, this one doesn't relate to fantasy football too much, but I wanted to put it in here just,
out of spite.
I felt vindicated. John Robinson was fired, who is the GM of the Titans. And as Jorge has mentioned before, we live streamed the NFL draft, and I absolutely lost my mind when they traded AJ Brown. So, that was a fireable offense to me. So good. Actually, I don't want to see anyone fail. It sucks seeing people lose their jobs, but that was a bad move.
Yeah, look, we had Titans fans on our live stream of the NFL draft who were not as mad as Tyler, who has no loyalty to this team whatsoever.
Nope.
Just went ballistic. Just more awesome video content you could check out here at Fantasy and Frames.
Yes. Next up is Kenneth Walker has a ankle injury, and I'm not going to lie to you. I put this note in there on Tuesday, and I have not checked back on it, so I need to look at it. But the last thing I heard was that he is going to miss a few weeks, maybe at most. That's bad. That is real bad news for the Seahawks. That is real bad news for his fantasy managers. There's no one really that's going to fill that role. You can't just go ahead and claim DJ Dallas because he's hurt too. Travis Homer's hurt. Anyone else playing running back for them is not good. So it's just a bad situation.
So I don't exactly know the current standing for DJ Dallas in terms of his health, whether or not he is playing or he is not playing. I have him in a roster spot in one of my dynasty leagues, one of my main dynasty leagues here, out of necessity. And he's one of those players, and this is one of those leagues where there are multiple flex spots. You just have to plug and chug and everybody you have. He's staying in that flex spot, whether he's active or inactive. That's how shallow my bench is. One.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I know. Two, I'm like, man, I really hope you're playing because I'm running out of options here.
Got it. So the latest thing I've seen is that Walker and DJ Dallas were not seen at practice, but Travis Homer was.
Well,
so
that could tell you a
Pete
lot.
Carroll labeled them game time decisions, so he's just messing with people at this point.
Yeah, go into my phone, open up my app, Travis Homer, if he's available. I mean,
Yeah.
again, 6 teams on a bye. If you need to get into the playoffs against Carolina, this could be an interesting week for you.
Yep. Side note: Odell Beckham is not a fantasy relevant asset.
Not at all.
If you stashed him, drop him, stop wasting your time. I don't think he's going to even be back for the playoffs, but he will not play in the regular season.
Yeah, no, he's somebody you can definitively let go.
Yes. Lamar Jackson sprained PCL, out 1 to 3 weeks. Also, very bad news.
I in Scott Fishbowl when I drafted, which by the way, that has been a complete wreck this entire year.
Oh yeah.
Just my worst Scott Fishbowl performance ever. I feel so
Who
guilty and
were your
ashamed.
quarterbacks in Scott Fishbowl?
Okay, so that I'm glad you brought that up. So I pulling up my MFL app, which sucks, and I'm glad they're moving to Sleeper next year.
Thanks the Lord.
My
I honestly
quarterbacks,
lost interest in the league a little bit because that MFL app's so terrible. Like I just didn't want to use it.
like user friendliness definitely needs to be incorporated into these mainstream leagues, or these leagues that are becoming more mainstream. So my quarterbacks there are Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, and Tyler Huntley, because I was
Nice.
concerned that Lamar Jackson might get injured earlier on in the season, just because he hasn't been the beacon of health the past few seasons. Turns out, doesn't help me at all because I'm not in the Scott Fishbowl playoffs. But for those who are and who have Tyler Huntley, you may have dodged a bullet. Maybe not this week, but I think you dodged a bullet. And of course, when I say not this week, this may be discussed later on in the show.
Yes, absolutely. Tyron Smith practice window has opened. For those of you that only pay attention to the offensive skill positions, Tyron Smith is a rather good football player at left tackle for the Dallas Cowboys, who I feel can have an impact on that offense and the performance of that offense. So I thought it was relevant to put in here.
I mean, they're only one of the highest scoring offenses, if not the highest scoring offense since Dak's gotten back. And now you give this all pro left tackle who's Superman on the offensive line, which, by the way, it's not like the offensive line for Dallas is hurting, per se, in terms of performance. So this is just more like, I never thought I'd say this, but this is a big depth move, even though he's going to be the starter, not depth. More Cowboys, man, I hope my wife's not listening. The Cowboys should have a lot of Cowboys fans should be really optimistic going forward, just how well this team is playing.
Yeah. It's a little shameful that Dallas is going to have to travel for a playoff game, but it is what it is.
Well, they don't have a lot of luck in the playoffs at home, so maybe this is a good thing. I don't know.
There you go. Yeah. They should lose a couple and just grab the 7th seed.
Yeah, lose I think it's the last week of the season against Washington, or the second to last week. Yeah, lose against them so we can get into the playoffs too.
Yeah. And watch Taylor Heineke just go toe-to-toe with Tom Brady.
Again, part 2.
Yep.
Yeah, which was awesome. Whatever. I'll spare you my Taylor Heineke fandom for one day.
Oh, God. Well, hey, I'm happy that you're happy with Taylor Heineke.
I'm happy. Well,
I hope the Commanders find a starting level franchise quarterback.
Happy with Taylor Heineke is a strong phrase.
It's fun.
It's fun.
Yeah.
I'm happy they're winning. However they're winning, however they're motivated, however the chemistry is with this team, whatever it is, don't stop. I'm happy.
Absolutely. Tua got knocked out of the game with an ankle injury, but he should be good for week 14.
Yep.
Jalen Waddle, leg injury. He's already said he's ready to go. So it's something to keep an eye on, but they both are active and will be playing. Hayden Hurst, calf injury. This one actually sucks pretty bad. He's doubtful for this week, probably multiple weeks. He was one of the very few reliable tight ends at this point in the season, and he is gone now. So that sucks. You got to find a replacement, and there is no replacement on the Cincinnati Bengals. So, I'll talk about a couple guys later in the show that maybe you can target. Aaron Jones, shin injury. Luckily, they have their bye week this week, so hopefully it will not affect anyone for the fantasy playoffs.
Let me ask you a question. If you have
Yes.
AJ Dillon, given his back-to-back weeks of decent play, how comfortable are you inserting him as your RB2 and or flex in the fantasy playoffs?
I don't feel great about RB2.
Okay.
but I feel like I would confidently flex him. It's hard, but he has had a good few weeks. Aaron Jones is getting banged up. Aaron Jones is getting old. So maybe we're seeing the same thing happen last year. AJ Dillon came on near the end of the season.
Yep.
So we could be seeing the same thing again. So yeah, I'd give him a shot.
I'm messing up the reference already, but it's the show that has Andy Samberg, and it has the guy, the police chief, who's like
Oh,
vindication.
yeah.
Uh,
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah, yes, exactly. That's exactly what fantasy managers could be cheering or saying in a couple weeks with Aaron Jones. Vindication! I've held him my entire season. He's done nothing for me except the past 2 weeks. And this could be helpful for me going forward. So,
Hopefully. Cortland Sutton is doubtful. He's not going to play. So Greg Dulcich and Jerry Jeudy,
that's
they are going to take every single one of Russell Wilson's 187 pass yards that he's going to get and probably split them between them. So, they're actually viable plays.
let's face it. For fantasy purposes, Cortland Sutton has been day to day and non-existent on Sunday, which is unfortunate. You saw the connection between him and Russell Wilson in the offseason during practice, where it doesn't matter apparently. Yeah, nothing good to say here except maybe an upside play, maybe a good play with Jeudy later on. Maybe we'll talk about him later.
Yeah. So actually, let me ask you a question. This is trailing off of redraft a little bit.
Sure.
Do you think Cortland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy is a buy in Dynasty?
I would buy Jeudy. I
Okay.
think the talent is there. Sutton, he already has an ACL injury. How long is his shelf life going to be? Is this purely talent and health talking right now?
It is, but it's also,
you
it's
can
a
get
little hope for next year.
Sure. I think let me put it another way. You can definitely get Cortland Sutton a lot cheaper than Jerry Jeudy if you're trying to get your wide receiver 3 or flex position in order for your roster.
Yep, absolutely. And hopefully they find a coach that can actually handle it next year. And
so you think it's coaching? You don't think it's Russ?
I think it's both.
Okay. Just the mesh is just not.
Yeah. My view is Russell Wilson is not what he used to be. There's no way he's this bad. Like
Right.
he's not like, he's the worst quarterback in the NFL right now. He is horrendous.
It's crazy. They brought Nathaniel Hackett to coach Aaron Rodgers, except they didn't get Aaron Rodgers. So it's like, oh, well, we'll get a big name. We'll get Russell Wilson and sign him to a max deal, and he'll be Aaron Rodgers. And it's like, no, he's not Aaron Rodgers. You hired the wrong coach. The last administration, let's be fair. The people who got Hackett, who got Russell Wilson, they're not the ones who run the ship now. The Broncos ownership came in. They got new people there. So they're kind of stuck with the previous regime's, blunders, so to speak.
But Hackett can go. Russ can't.
This is true.
Treylon Burks was in concussion protocol, but Vrabel said he's doing well. I have not heard any updates. He got smacked pretty good in that game last week, so hopefully he can come back and he is healthy after that.
But held on to the ball in the end zone, getting lit up by 2 defenders. That
he did. Good for him.
Good for him. Not for his brain. Hopefully he feels better, because concussions are a serious thing.
Yes, they are.
Everybody says, "Oh, well, his ankle's doing well, his arm is doing well, his shoulder's doing well." What the hell does it mean when your brain's doing? His brain is less concussed than it was. I guess the metrics can tell you based off of the test scores you're running, but the brain is an entirely different organ than people are. I think the mainstream fans or the people who are not in the medical field realize it's not one of those things where it just bounces back from injury and is good as new. Like, no, they don't. When your brain develops, this is me going on a science tangent here. When your brain develops and matures, the cells it has are the cells it has. They're not making many more of it. Versus, your other organs in your body, their cells are regenerating. So when they say his brain is doing well, it's damaged.
Yes.
It's just the extent of the damage that builds up over time. So concussions, not something to fuck with. Mom, I
at
hope
all.
you're not watching because I just
Oh, he has officially been ruled out this week.
so.
And I think that is all the news so far.
Yeah, it's been
It was a bloodbath last week. It was bad.
It was bad. But you know what? Speaking of bad, we're not going to finish. We're not. You know what? Let's get the bad out of the way. I know in our show sheet we have our plays and fades, and we do the plays first and the fades second. But let's do the fades now, and end the show with some good news, so people can be a little bit more excited heading into week 14. Does that sound good to you?
I like it.
All right, let's go with our fades here. I'm going to start with the quarterback position, and of course, if you want more names in terms of who to start, who to sit, who to raise your expectations on, who to lower your expectations on, head over to fantasyandframes.com, read our start and sit articles. We got a comment here from Jeremy Noble. I came for the football. I stay for the biology. I love it. That's this is what you get on a Friday night podcast. Yep. Exactly. Only on Fridays do you get some biology thrown in here. Head over to fantasyandframes.com, read Jonathan Klanowski's start and sit article. He's been doing great the past couple of weeks, just really nailing his picks here, as well as listen to our Chasing Upside articles we have each and every week. So with that, let's get to the fade position. And I talked about him earlier, or alluded to him earlier in this week's matchup versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's Tyler Huntley. Let's kind of pump the brakes on this. The Steelers, yes, over the course of the entire season, on average, are allowing a pretty decent chunk of points to the quarterback position for fantasy purposes.
Didn't have TJ Watt for a large portion of that.
Exactly. Like, that's my point here. The defense for the Steelers, they're starting to get together. Yes, TJ Watt has not been playing all TJ Wattful as of late, but like this defense is starting to get back together. They held Marcus Mariota, who has a very similar skill set to Tyler Huntley, to just 11 points last week. You go back to last year when they took on the Steelers, Tyler Huntley was held to 141 yards passing, 72 yards rushing, had 2 picks, and only got you 8.8 fantasy points. So for a team and the Ravens, who are looking kind of banged up all over the place, being thrust into this matchup, a divisional matchup, a tough matchup against the Steelers, who are now getting healthy on the defensive side of the ball, who have TJ Watt back. And as TJ Watt goes, so does Alex Highsmith. You got Micah Fitzpatrick. I get it. Ooh, the cheat code. Well, cheaters don't always prosper. I'm not going to say they never prosper, but they don't always prosper. And I don't think the cheat code is going to help you this week. So I'm fading Tyler Huntley. Going to the the running back position. I was surprised on Monday Night Football just how even the workload was for Leonard Fournette and Rachaad White. When you look at their attempts, when you look at their targets, they're pretty comparable to one another. When you look at their yardage, again, very comparable to one another. Fournette kind of got banged up in that game, but he was, in terms of yards per carry, he was a lot more efficient than Rachaad White was. This week is a horrible, horrible matchup for any basic position for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week, going against the best defense in the NFL in the 49ers.
So good.
They really are. They're allowing the fewest points per game to the running back position. That is why, though, I'm going to say fade Rachaad White this week. I'm not really high on him. If anything, what you saw early in the game on Monday Night Football was the commitment that the Buccaneers are having to Leonard Fournette. Now, you could be saying, Jorge, well, they use them pretty equally. What kind of commitment are you talking about? I'm like, well, let's think about this. Fournette got injured, okay? And as his playing time kind of went down, we saw Rachaad White's increase. I think, the Buccaneers are kind of getting back to that formula that kind of helped them in the playoffs a few years ago when they, by the way, won the Super Bowl. And let me just stop right now. I am not saying that the Buccaneers are going to win the Super Bowl. I have a theory that we may get to later on. But let's keep the train rolling.
I need to hear this theory.
It's a crazy one that I heard and I saw on Twitter, and forgive me for not remembering who said it, but it was like on one of the ESPN shows, Around the Horn, or whatever the whatever it is. I promise I'll get to it before the show's over.
All right.
But look, Fournette was the better running back out of the two, and like, yes, I get he's banged up, but the Buccaneers are getting back to, hey, let's run the ball, let's get these receiving options open, let's get the mismatches, and at the end of the day, there are only so many passes to go around to make Rachaad White a viable flex option here in the receiving game. And one of the things he's going to have to deal with this week, or by things I mean players, is linebacker Dre Greenlaw, who you'll definitely be reading about in my IDP starts article, which will come out later tonight / early tomorrow morning. He plays really well in coverage. He has a very low missed tackle rate, and he doesn't allow for many yards after the catch, which last time I checked is not great for a pass-catching running back, let alone a pass-catching running back or a running back of any sort versus this 49ers defense. So Rachaad White, fading him this week at quarterback. Don't get swept away by Tyler Huntley and his rushing upside. For more sits at the offensive positions, head over to fantasyandframes.com and read our starts and sits article.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go ahead and give you a wide receiver fade for this week. Every week when I'm going through these, I really try to I try to find the right stats. I try to find the right matchups of, hey, this team is giving up the fewest points here. This is a bad matchup for this player. I don't have that this week. What I have is I have CeeDee Lamb. I'm fading CeeDee Lamb, who's the wide receiver 8, not because it's a bad matchup. They're playing the Texans. I'm not going to say the Texans are performing against the wide receiver position. You know why they're doing that? Because no one's throwing against them. They're only 15.9 targets per game to the wide receiver position. That's the second fewest in the NFL, in front of only the Bears. No one has any need to throw against this team. Tony Pollard and Zeke Elliott are going to have an absolute field day. The Cowboys are going to boat race this team. The last time the Texans played an elite offense was the Dolphins, and none of that offense even played in the fourth quarter. They didn't bother. So I really think Dak, CD, Pollard, Zeke, these guys are going to play maybe 75% of a game. And it's extremely difficult to bench CD, but if you're in a shallower league where you might have a lot of good options, you should keep this in mind. It's going to be a bloodbath. They're going to put up a lot of points real quick, and I think a lot of it's going to be on the ground.
I guess another way of looking at this is, if you need CD in your wide receiver slot to go off this week to help get you over the hump to get you into the fantasy playoffs, you may be disappointed. He may not blow up. He's still going to get you production.
Yep.
But he's not going to be your saving grace to help get you into the fantasy playoffs. Which, by the way, Jeremy Noble, because you're still watching, and I say that, and then he comments. So my timing here is perfect. I have to, in my home league, not only defeat him, okay, but then the defending champ has to lose his game. That is my only recipe for getting into the fantasy playoffs in my home league, which is embarrassing. But that always happens to be the case, I feel like, for most people. So 3 TDs for Michael Gallup. I don't know about 3 TDs, but I do like
2 last week. Just needs 1 more.
I mean, I do like the Michael Gallup love. So anyhow, Jeremy, I hope you lose this week. Anywho, please carry on.
And last, I was supposed to put a tight end fade in here. I got nothing.
6 teams are on a bye. Tight end is the scarcest position in all of football. What are we going to do?
Yeah, you got Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, Pat Freiermuth, Dalton Schultz, George Kittle, Greg Dulcich, Gerald Everett. I can't reasonably fade any of those guys. They're just the depth at the position is so bad. Like just play them.
I'll tell you where you could potentially see some fading of the tight end position, and tell me if you heard this one so far this show already. Over at fantasyandframes.com in our starts and sits article with Jonathan Klinowski, who, if you don't follow at J Klinowski NFL on Twitter, you should. Great fantasy football fan, one great fantasy football analyst, two. Doesn't get a lot of press because the timing between where he's living in the UK versus all the stuff over here in the United States, where we're consuming a bunch of this fantasy football content. There's just not a lot of overlap, but we're hoping to get them on more shows, get them featured more and more articles. Been with us for years. Fantastic. Again, fantasy analyst. Broke down the tight end position here over in our start and sit articles. So check that out at fantasyandframes.com. But I'm with you. It's tough. It's tough sledding for this week to fade a lot of tight ends.
It is.
Before we get into our plays of the week, just want to do our read here for Underdog Fantasy. Look, best ball. I don't think you can do best ball drafts anymore or weekly best ball drafts anymore, but you can do all these different fades. I feel like every single week they increase the amount of prop. Thank you very much for if you're watching on our YouTube channel. The promo code is flashing across the screen. Promo code frames, 100% match up to your deposit up to $100 if you're signing up for the first time. They increase the number of prop bets each and every single week, so you get more and more options to take home some cash. For those who say, "Oh, well, it's hard to get these wins." I mean, it's not easy. Don't be wrong, but it's certainly doable. I've known a number of people who've gone on there, used the promo code frames, have played in prop bets, and they're winning. Literally, you could throw down like $1 or $2 and walk away, depending on the multipliers of these games, with like 30 or 40, $50. Again, I'm not saying drop an entire absorbent amount of money on this, but you could literally walk away with some extra cash here, especially during the holiday season. Wanting to get those presents for your family, yada yada yada, family, friends, whatever you want to do. Again, these prop bets really advantageous. You listen to us, we can help you get those wins. So head over to Underdog Fantasy, download the app, use the promo code frames, get a 100% match up to your first deposit up to $100. So have fun with that, folks.
All right. How many best ball leagues did you do on Underdog?
Which, by the way, you can do best ball year round now that I'm researching a little bit more, looking at the screen. I probably am in 7 best ball leagues. And let me tell you, let me promote this a little. Now that we're talking about Underdog, let me promote this a little bit more. Obviously, fantasy football season coming towards an end. But around February, when there's no football on TV anymore, I guarantee you're going to start getting your itch for fantasy football again. But you're like, I don't know. I don't want to start talking about fantasy football. The drafts, our leagues are not until August. There's but again, you have that itch for fantasy football. You want to do something about it. Go to Underdog, sign up, use the promo code frames, and join a best ball league. You literally, all you do is put down $3, $1, $2, whatever it is. And you can just basically do a best ball league where it's best. For those who don't know, best ball leagues are you draft your team. That's it. You don't have to worry about trades. You don't have to worry about waiver wire. You don't have to worry about anything. That's your team for the year. And that's what, is very, for a lot of people who play fantasy football who don't like to deal with the minutia of all the different things because they got so many other leagues to deal with. No, you just set it, forget it, you're done. And that could definitely, scratch that itch for you during the offseason as we're getting close to in the coming weeks here. So just, again, throwing that out there, Underdog Fantasy, a lot of good reasons to sign up. Again, use the promo code FRAMES, 100% match on your deposit up to $100. With that, let's get into our plays of the week. I'll start with the quarterback position. The first one is it's bold. I'm not going to say it's a highly recommended one.
It is,
but well, I guess technically it's the first one I listed. So I guess if you want to go by that on our show sheet, it is a highly recommended one. Tom Brady the past month has been averaging 17.1 points per game. He's Tom freaking Brady. I don't care. It's against the 49ers. The GOAT is going to GOAT. If you do it. And by do it, I mean, don't do it. That's bad. Don't do it.
Hey, it could be a real glory play for you.
Here's the thing, right? Yes, it could be. How do I say this without crossing into other streams of life? Since a certain time this season for Tom Brady, which may or may not have been eventful, he has been playing lights out. In terms of clutch plays against tough matchups, he has been playing lights out from a real football standpoint. For fantasy, again, averaging, close to, like I said, 17.1 points per game, very serviceable. For most fantasy managers in terms of, ECR rankings or Fantasy Pros ECR rankings, he's outside the top 12. So he's not necessarily a must start quarterback for you. Definitely does not have the matchup this week against the 49ers. But if there ever was somebody, let's say, that you wanted to take a couple of dollar gamble on here, maybe at Underdog Fantasy using the promo code frames, or whether it's on your DraftKings lineup or just somebody you wanted for cheap that could have potential upside just because he is the GOAT. It's that time of year where I'm having a hard time looking away from Tom Brady, and it's not a popular take. It probably would get crucified. But if anybody could do it, it'd be Tom Brady.
I'm going to have to see if Keith and Joe endorse this DraftKings Tom Brady play.
As successful as they are, they would probably look to me and say, Jorge, what the hell are you smoking? And it says, I'm not smoking, it's Gatorade. So that's what I'm drinking. Apparently Gatorade does the body well for athletics, not so much for brain acumen, knowledge, all that jazz. A quarterback play, however, that I am interested in this week is Jared Goff versus the Vikings. The Vikings are allowing, over the course of the season, 19.9 points per game to the quarterback position, which is seventh best. Look, Jared Goff has been playing lights out the past couple weeks, averaging close to that very average with 19.6. And let's not forget Thanksgiving. Like, that was a tough matchup against the Buffalo Bills, who are very stingy at the going against quarterbacks for fantasy purposes. The Lions' offensive line the past month, since week 10, has been one of the best offensive lines, one of the best pass blocking offensive lines in all of football. You look at the receiving, options here. They lost Hawkinson, obviously, in the trade on the trade deadline day. But you got Jameson Williams coming back. You have the emergence of DJ Chark. You're having these role players step up. And let's not forget, they have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is just
he's a superstar, man.
He is a superstar. And it's funny because this time last year, whether it's a redraft folk or dynasty folk, people didn't know what to make of it. It's like, okay, he keeps producing. Let me throw him in my lineup. And guess what? He's doing it again. He's doing it again. They're playing really well. And the running game with Jamal Williams and the occasional sprinkling in of DeAndre Swift, words I would not think I would say back in August, is working. This team is playing well. And at the end of the day, if the Lions have any hope of making it to the playoffs, which is slim, they need this win. And they need this win against this divisional opponent, against the Vikings, who, when you look at how they've been playing defensively, they've been actually on a slump as of late. And when I look at matchups here for Jared Goff, one potential one here is Amon-Ra St. Brown, who, when we look at the linebacker position, I know normally we don't associate linebackers with covering slot wide receivers. But when we look at the linebacker position, Jordan Hicks, one of the linebackers for the Vikings, has been playing more in slot coverage and has been playing very badly. Like, we're talking about missing tackles, having a missed tackle rate of 12%, allowing a high passer rating. Just not been playing very well, which is great, for Amon-Ra, which ultimately can help Jared Goff be great. Things are pointing up for Jared Goff this week, and as well as the Lions as a whole, as a team. I think this is going to be a very competitive, highly contested game this week. So fire up Jared Goff for your streaming matchups this week. Again, buy Mageddon, 6 teams on a bye.
All right, I'm testing your play, Jorge.
Okay.
I have a league where I don't need a win, but it'd be nice.
Pad your stats a little bit. Okay.
Yeah. And I have Kyler Murray, who is playing on Monday night against New England. Would you play Jared Goff over Kyler Murray?
So people would love to make the immediate comparison. Kyler Murray, big arm, big receiving targets, can scramble. Josh Allen, big arm, receiving targets, can scramble. This does not make them one and the same.
No.
The offensive line for the Cardinals, not excellent. The Bills' offensive line, better. Head coach for the Bills, great. Head coach / play caller for the Cardinals, not awesome.
That was kind.
Well, it's the holiday season. I'm not trying to trash people completely. That's what September and October are for. Duh. I'm a little hesitant on these Cardinals this week. I think D Hop will get his because he's DeAndre Hopkins. I think aside from that, I you know what? F it. I'd still roll Jared Goff over Kyler Murray this week just because I think Belichick gets back to Belichicking down the stretch of the season and finds a way to shut down this inept Cliff Kingsbury offense. Now that was being kind.
Yes, that was being kind. You're a very kind man, Jorge.
I'll do what I can. Speaking of being kind, the fantasy gods, the Brees Hall managers who comb the waiver wire have been combing the waiver wire for their answer at running back. We thought it would be James Robinson at the trade deadline. Yes, insert Nate Markham, who's preparing for Shoot the Gap right now, who probably would be throwing me shade because everybody knows I'm a James Robinson fan. Your prayers have been answered. It's Zonovan Bam White. A lot of people around the fantasy football sphere on Twitter or the analysts you listen to on other podcasts are like, oh my God, I don't know what to make of this Jets backfield. This is a three-headed approach. Michael Carter's coming back. He's been cleared this week to play. You don't know who to play on this Jets running back situation. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. It is not that hard to look at the math and see last week versus the Vikings, 15 attempts rushing for Zonovan Bam White. The next closest running back on the Jets had 4. Okay. And let's call a spade here. Michael Carter, he is a complementary piece to this running game and passing game. And I say complementary very generously. If you actually look back at his half PPR stats from the course of the season in terms of fantasy point production, he has like a couple games, like the one game after Brees Hall tore his ACL, and then one other. Not really doing much for you other than that. Not really taking away volume, I think, from Zonovan White this week versus the Bills. The Bills, again, a tough matchup, but the volume is going to be there. White was used well in the receiving game as well. He was averaging on the ground 6 yards a carry. Look, you wanted Brees Hall light, you got it in Zonovan White. So I'm definitely very high on him this week. The next one, Zonovan White, Zonovan Knight. Wow, spent the whole time hyping this guy up, and I was hyping up the wrong person. Zonovan White out there is super happy. No, Zonovan Knight, Zonovan Knight for the Jets. Thank you very much. It's funny. A little behind the scenes. As I'm talking right now, trying to give you the hype on Zonovan White, who's some other player somewhere in the world who I'm hoping he's equally as good as Zonovan Knight. I have my show sheet on my other screen, and I see Tyler highlighting the last name White, and I'm like, yes, that is who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Zonovan White. And slowly the word is being turned from White to Knight, and I'm like, oh, Samsonite. I was way off.
I was trying to save you, man. I didn't want to say it out loud.
No, it's F it. I don't care. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I can totally admit that. So yes, Zonovan Knight,
aka something really cool about him. His nickname is Bam.
Bam. Yeah. I have issue with this. I have issue with you. And let me tell you why I have issue with this. And I'm not a Seahawks fan. I am a Commanders fan. And I, for a long period of time, hated the Seahawks, especially during the Legion of Boom years, because they, I want to say for a good part of this century, all the times the Commanders made it into the playoffs or advanced in the playoffs, their trip ended facing the Seattle Seahawks. That being the case, not a fan of them for a long period of time. Definitely not a fan of them during the Legion of Boom years. But the person who made the Legion of Boom was Bam Cam Chancellor, the safety there. That is a nickname that I don't think should be thrown around too lightly.
That's fair.
I appreciate Zonovan Knight in his performance, not Zonovan White, Zonovan Knight. But Bam, I think they're doing some disservice to Cam Chancellor there.
All right, fair enough.
The next running back here, speaking of the Seahawks, is Chuba, not Chuba, because that would be, again, somebody else on this planet that we shouldn't be talking about. Chuba Hubbard versus the Seahawks. Look, Deontay Foreman has been nursing an injury all this week. I believe he hasn't gotten in any practices or has been at least limited in one. But there is some concern that he's not going to be able to play this week. Last week, you saw Hubbard get the lion's share of the touches against a tough run defense of the Denver Broncos. The Seahawks are allowing the fourth most fantasy points to the running back position on the season. Look, volume is king. If there was an area of concern for Chuba Hubbard, though, it would be his lack of involvement in the receiving game. He got literally 0 targets last week, which, aka in half PPR, full PPR leagues, not optimal. But at the end of the day, you're looking for a flex. This is a flex play at most, I believe, this week. And again, buy him again, 6 teams on a bye. You need somebody that has high upside. This is for the people who are in the fantasy playoff cusp, who need that upside play. This is the upside play. Those people who want the DFS play, this is the play. Chuba Hubbard, it doesn't get better than this matchup this week for him. What are the expectations here? What am I really expecting? I'm expecting close to 10 points. And you know what? That might be enough to help get you over the hump. Are there better plays? Sure, there are better plays. But with 6 teams on a bye, and if you're desperate for a flex option here, Chuba Hubbard, if Deontay Foreman does not go, is I think the play you want to have here versus the Seahawks.
I like it. All right, and we're going to go ahead and jump into the wide receiver plays that I'm excited about. First one is Jerry Jeudy. He's currently the wide receiver 27. He will be taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. Cortland Sutton is out, and as you just said, volume is king. So Judy's been worked back slowly from his injury. He was last week. He only played 38% of snaps. That's going to change this week. He's the guy. He's going to be out there for all of these snaps, and he's going to be getting all these targets. And let's not forget, before Jeudy got injured, he was starting to come on a little bit. He went 5 straight weeks with over 50 receiving yards, 23 total receptions in that span. His finishes in that span were wide receiver 19, 51, and 42. Not great. Then 19 and wide receiver 14. Chiefs are surrendering 31.5 half PPR points per game to the wide receiver position, which is 29th in the NFL. And Jerry Jeudy is pretty much it. I mean, I'm sure Kendall Hinton will have 3 receptions for 7 yards, but Judy's going to be the guy to get all this volume. And Russ isn't great, but I really think Jeudy can finish as a high-end wide receiver 2 this week. I feel pretty strongly about that.
That is backup quarterback Kendall Hinton that you're talking about, getting 3 targets this week. Thank you very much. And yeah, look, I really am a fan of this matchup this week with Jerry Jeudy, cornerback for the Kansas City Chiefs. Joshua Williams in zone coverage has allowed a perfect passer rating when targeted of 158.3, as well as allowing 87.5% catch percentage. He is a better man cover corner than he is zone, and I think that's what the Broncos exploit this week with Jerry Jeudy playing a lot of zone coverage. I think he's going to really feast in this matchup here. I don't know what this does for Russ. Obviously, just because your wide receiver has great success doesn't necessarily mean your quarterback's going to have great success. But I think for Jeudy, this is a very good matchup this week against a divisional foe.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I think about 70% of Russell Wilson's 171 passing yards are going to go to Jerry Jeudy.
And 47 rushing yards, maybe. That's being generous. That's very generous, yeah.
And I don't know, is he going to get a touchdown this week? I don't think he's going to beat the bathrooms.
So, so let me ask you a question. And I'm horrible with name pronunciation. Like I can read it kind of like I don't know. It's just one of my quirks here.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Dulcich? Is that the correct pronunciation of the tight end there?
Yes. Yes, Greg Dulcich.
I got one right. He has been the fantasy superstar for the Denver Broncos this year. And that's so sad.
But he was supposed to be good coming out. He was like everyone's number 3 tight end in this class coming out of
Okay.
UCLA. He was a very good player in college. This is not like a big surprise to see him succeeding, but it can be surprising to see almost any tight end succeed this early in their career. But if it wasn't Trey McBride, it was Greg Dulcich, and then it was everyone else.
Gotcha.
So he was highly touted coming out.
Word. Okay,
and I was about to jump into my tight ends, but I forgot I have one more wide receiver, which is DJ Chark. And you kind of mentioned him earlier, and you discussed the Vikings matchup for the Lions. This game would be the highest over under the week if it weren't for Dolphins Chargers. It's 51.5. It's 2 very good offenses and 2 very bad defenses. I would be smashing the over if I were able to gamble in Florida, which I'm not.
Really?
Yep.
Florida doesn't allow DFS gambling. That's crazy.
Nope. The gambling industry in Florida is controlled by the Seminole tribe, and they are working on it, but they're figuring it out. So it's not there yet.
Before you finish with DJ Chark here, Jeremy Noble says, if only Tim Patrick were playing the linchpin of that offense. I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or if you're actually serious.
I think he would have been the linchpin of that offense if it were an offense.
if Nathaniel Hackett wasn't the head coach.
Yeah, it's not an offense. It's just offensive.
Nice. Very nice.
So we're talking about DJ Chark here, the Detroit Lions wide receiver. He's been worked back steadily from his injury. He got past the 80% snap share mark last week, paid off to the tune of 6 receptions for 98 yards. Vikings are giving up all kinds of points to the wide receiver position, 32.2. It's 30th in the NFL. I know Amon-Ra St. Brown is the one he's going to eat this week, but I think this is just going to be a feast for the Lions offense, and I don't see why DJ Chark can't go out and get himself a healthy meal against this Minnesota Vikings defense.
Nice. And with the tight end position to wrap us up here.
Oh, man. So I'm kind of cheating here, so I got 2.
Okay.
David Njoku is currently the tight end 18. I would imagine that will go up unless everyone is just really worried about his knee. But he has been removed from the injury report against the Bengals. And if he's removed from the injury report and he's on the field, I would expect to see a lot of him. He is a huge part of that offense. We're talking about linchpins and Tim Patrick. I think David Njoku can be the linchpin of this offense.
Nice.
And if they want to get some of this rust off of Deshaun Watson, why not throw it to your 6'4" athletic marvel over the middle of the field?
Great question. Yeah.
And since I felt like that was cheating a little bit, my honorable mention, once again, I'm going back to the well because I did it last week, is Daniel Bellinger. He's playing an awesome Eagles defense, but volume. And there's a chance Saquon may miss with his neck being sore, I think I read. If you lost Hayden Hurst, if you have someone on bye, if you're just really screwed this week, Daniel Bellinger is a good shot. He's been performing, and he is probably your best shot at a back-end tight end 1 finish, unless somehow your league has not picked up Greg Dulcich yet. So, yeah, go ahead and throw Daniel Bellinger in there.
Very nice. Well, that's going to wrap up our plays and fades segment here on Fourth and Frames. And as promised earlier in the show, let me go into my Tom Brady anecdote before we sign off here. Somebody was on maybe Around the Horn. I think it was Around the Horn on ESPN earlier in the season during Tom Brady's early struggles. Said Tom Brady is playing atrociously. The Buccaneers are going to have, however, a losing record, yet somehow make the playoffs. And then look who he's facing. He's facing a Kirk Cousins, maybe Purdy. Now, at the time, it was Jimmy Garoppolo, but now Brock Purdy. Maybe if he's facing a Geno Smith, facing a Cowboys team that always chokes in the playoffs, and his only real source of competition would be Jalen Hurts. But if you're pitting the GOAT versus Jalen Hurts, are you really going to shy away from the GOAT? So he was making this rant of how somehow, some way, given the fact that are you trusting all these quarterbacks with very limited success in the playoffs, that somehow the Buccaneers end up finding themselves back in the Super Bowl with potentially facing somebody and upsetting them. And the more I keep seeing it, I'm like, well, they are playing better. They are getting back to that fundamental philosophy that helped get them into the playoffs and run the table back a couple of years ago. And I'm not going to jump into other news here that's outside the realm of football, but ever since a certain time in Tom Brady's living situation, he has been playing lights out. The Buccaneers have been playing inspired. They have been getting back to basics. Their defense is playing lights out. If anyone was to do it, it would be the greatest football player of all history, which we are lucky enough to be watching still to this day. In my opinion,
that's fair. And I mean, Tom Brady's not the GOAT because of the regular season. Tom Brady's the GOAT because of the postseason.
That is correct. So just I got to find out who it was. I got to give the person proper credit, but just something for you all to think about.
And also think about Geno Smith being the best quarterback in the NFC playoffs.
Man.
Sorry, I had to end on that.
Of all the things we could have predicted this year, that is definitely the very last thing, I believe. And with that, that's going to wrap up Fourth and Frames. Look, Tyler, thank you very much for hopping on this week. As always, you are a fantastic resource. If you're not following him, follow him at FF Tyler Heil on Twitter. He is the host of our Dynasty podcast here at Fantasy and Frames, the Dynasty 365 podcast. Him and Bill Mustafa, our UK correspondent here, our analyst here, one of our analysts from the UK, do a great show each and every week. You did your running back carousel here this week where you're talking about which running backs you're looking forward to, investing in going forward, and those you're not. If you haven't, head over to iTunes or whatever it is you downloaded your podcast from, Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Subscribe to the Dynasty 365 podcast and listen to their latest episode. Got a lot of Dynasty content coming out after the season is over, so really looking forward to that, whether it's our player evals coming out of college, whether it's our Dynasty risers and fallers or Dynasty targets for you heading forward. A lot of stuff coming out. Tyler is going to be captaining that ship and really excited for what he has got in store for you all for here at Fantasy and Frame. So thank you very much for joining this week, Tyler. Any parting words here before we head out?
Yeah, I really should have saved the Geno Smith thing for right now. This would have been perfect timing. So I'm going to say no. I don't have any parting words.
Fair enough. So for Tyler Heil, I'm Jorge Edwards. Remember to head over to fantasyandframes.com to check out all of our article content, as well as all of our other social media handles where you can get different forms of our content digested in different ways. And make sure you tune in on Sunday here on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter for our Fantasy and Frames pregame show starting at 9:30 a.m., taking it all the way to noon, getting you ready for your matchups. So for Tyler, I'm Jorge. Y'all have a great night.